Look at this guy looking for the best places to list your short-term rentals. You're worried about the wrong thing. Listen, I'm about to show you the 5 best listing sites to list your short-term rental property. In this video today, we're going to be talking about the best listings that you should be getting tapped into for your short-term rental business and which ones you should be getting into first and when you first start and how to properly scale your business by getting on multiple platforms. Let's get into it. So of course, the first one is the mother lode, the one that everybody knows about, the one that everybody is the most familiar with, Airbnb. And it's interesting because people look at me sometimes, they say, well, TJ is the Airbnb guy. And I'm not mad at it. I embrace it, but understand Airbnb or any other OTAs we're actually gonna look at today is the business I'm in. So we're not continging our business solely on any of these OTAs, but at the end of the day, start with Airbnb. That's definitely the place that you need to start because understand, Airbnb is still the most turnkey platform out there. When you think about all the things that's required to successfully start and run a business, like things like security issues, things like background checks, payroll, right? Merchant processing, things like that, Airbnb already has covered within the platform. So what's great about it is that not only is it the most known platform out there because of the disruption that this platform did in the short-term rental industry, but it literally is the best place to start and scale your short-term rental business. Next is VRBO or Vrbo for you lamos. I'm kidding y'all. But at the end of the day, VRBO is another great OTA that you can get tapped into. This is definitely one that people usually tend to want to list on next after they put their property up on Airbnb. So right now in our business, we're seeing probably about 15, maybe 20% of our bookings coming from VRBO, right? And it's a great site. And depending on what market you're in, it actually could be one of your primary OTA as well. 2 options of how they collect their hosting fee. You can expect to pay $4.99 a year or 8% of your bookings as well for as far as the hosting fee goes. You can expect the guests to pay anywhere between 6 to 15%. It tends to have less traffic, less hits per month than Airbnb, but it's still a great site to be on. You definitely want to be expanded on VRBO, especially depending on what market that you're in. Another thing to consider about VRBO is that guests tend to pay more. In our particular situation, we actually increase our room rate about 15% on VRBO over Airbnb because we found that guests just tend to pay more on VRBO and it helps keeps our calendar full and we love the VRBOs, get bookings when we get them because we tend to make a little more on those as well. And the next one is Booking.com, which this is actually one of my other top sites if you actually know how to use it. Booking.com is vastly different from Airbnb in a few different ways. Understand that there are no guest fees, and it's not that they don't charge your guest a guest fee. They charge you a fee. Like they will send you an invoice to pay their fee. So it's your responsibility as a host to charge that guest the guest fee. So that's one of the things that differs heavily. You can be charged depending on your profile, depending on your number of listings, anywhere between 10 to 25% of host fee. And again, remember, you have to pay this fee, but they're not charging your guests this fee. You have to remit those costs yourself from your guests and then pay those fees into Booking.com. And people don't really know this, but Booking.com a lot of times gets more hits per month than Airbnb. In terms of traffic and in terms of eyes getting on your listing, they are honestly just as good and in a lot of cases even better than Airbnb. Now, Booking.com also leaves a bad taste in a lot of investors' mouths because of how complicated it can be to set up these listings. If you have ever set up a listing on Airbnb and set up a listing on Booking.com, you can attest to the fact that it is a totally different experience. And so it's a much more streamlined process through Airbnb and can be a little bit convoluted on Booking.com. But if you can get past it and get your fee structured right properly, then this can definitely be a very lucrative OTA for you. So do not, and I repeat, do not sleep on Booking.com. And next is Expedia. And this becomes a great option for you as a host. If you have scaled your business and you've grown it to a certain level, you've gotten at least 20 doors, this is when Expedia becomes a phenomenal option for you. They get a ton of viewership, a ton of hits per month, because understand that it's not just like hotels or it's not just short-term rental stays. Of course, they do cars and things like that. So they get a lot of viewership. A lot of people solely book on Expedia for all their travel needs. So this becomes a really good option. Just like Booking.com, they are not collecting the fees from your guests. You have to be able to be the one to remit those fees yourself. So they're not as turnkey platform as Airbnb is. But it actually works because as a host, if you're able to list on Expedia, understand that it's probably a really good chance that your systems are pretty dialed in. So you should be in pretty good shape to tap in and jump on Expedia 100%. And they get a ton of traffic, like I mentioned earlier. And they're not that popular for the short-term rental space right now because of the requirement that it takes to get into listing your property on Expedia. They do have a 20-unit requirement minimum to get in, but once you do, you definitely will get a lot more views on your listings. By the way, Expedia may not be that popular for short-term rentals right now, but that's actually not a bad thing. It's a great thing because guess what? Less competition. And lastly is TripAdvisor. And honestly, I'm not that versed on TripAdvisor quite yet, but at the end of the day, it is still a great OTA for you to be familiar with. Now, one thing to note about TripAdvisor, you can only list a max amount of 5 listings per account. So that's one thing to keep in mind, and you can expect the host fee about 3% and the guest fee about 8 to 12% as well. Now, what I do like about TripAdvisor as well is that they have a very strong international presence. So it's actually still a good idea to get tapped into TripAdvisor because that is a ton of additional eyes on your listings, which of course give you a better chance of getting booked. So in reality, all these sites are amazing. And the truth is you want to get on all of these platforms. This is why utilizing a channel manager is very key in your short-term rental business, because what that does is it brings all your calendars from all these sites together succinctly. That way you're avoiding double bookings and you're able to manage all your units from all these platforms a lot easier. So what's the goal? Get on all these sites. But where should you start? If you remember, let's all say together, Airbnb. Yes, Airbnb is where we're going to start. And then as we scale our business and get our systems dialed in, we're going to get exposed to all these booking sites and these OTAs and institute a channel manager to make sure all these calendars are synced succinctly. So at the end of the day, we talked about how amazing these OTAs are. We talked about some of the pros and looking at all these different fees and the things all these OTAs provide. But at the end of the day, the goal should not be to put yourself in a single point of failure situation. If your business is solely contingent on any of these OTAs, then you are putting yourself in a single point of failure situation. If something were to happen to any one of these OTAs, what would happen to your business? This is why we need to make sure we are building our own direct booking pipeline, our own database that we can retarget for people to book direct with us. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is what's important because at the end of the day, remember, you can just do Airbnb or you can actually have a long-term sustainable short-term rental business. In order to do that, this is very paramount. So hope this was super valuable to you, talking about all these amazing listing sites that you can get on, but of course, your own direct booking site as well. And if you like this video, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and do yourself a favor and watch this video.